Hi everyone, welcome to Wednesday's Live. I've got another San Diego image, and this one's kind of more of an exercise in how we see and then translate that into painting. Hi Dwight. There's a big kind of transition that we, hi Ann, there's a big sort of mental or neural transition that we need to make when we paint. And that's to see what the eye is seeing versus what the mind knows, and certainly what a device like a camera sees. So I think we're progressing as a culture more into seeing things the way the devices that we use see. And that in turn is based on some perceptive habits that we've developed. The way the eye sees something is kind of a glance. Wherever you're looking, that's the area of focus, and anything else in the peripheral vision will become somewhat unfocused. Then when your eye darts over to the next spot, that goes into focus, and the rest of it goes into peripheral unfocused vision. And our mind tends to stitch those things together, and then that becomes what we know about a topic or a subject. And the camera, hi Richard, the camera has sort of been developed and adjusted, particularly digital ones, because the chips are set to prefer things. And we're kind of capitalizing on our perceptual habits, and we forget how the eye actually sees. So someone brought up the question of Impressionism a couple of episodes back, and what is Impressionism? I think Impressionism is being true to what the eye sees versus what the mind knows or the camera records. So that's a lot of maybe not painting related type considerations, but I think they're best considered in the context of painting. And that's what I want to get into with this one. So I'm going to make some changes to this, just a few. I like the general composition. I feel like the foreground is a little empty, so I put a figure in. I drew that in with an Apple pencil, and I'm going to try and activate the foreground with that, get a little more narrative going. I'm also going to, here's a quick one that I had done earlier. You notice we got a lot of blue in this deep shade, which is a very interesting subject, and it's closer to us. But then we get this vast expanse of blue sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that to later in the afternoon, have a more yellowish sky, something similar to that. These came out a little too bright, I believe. Hi, Shelley. But that's basic, and then I'm going to, this tan building, I'm going to convert to a more reddish color, like the one here. So those are the changes we'll make. So the first thing to consider, hi Linda, is, as always, my key horizontal and my key vertical. So, and I feel like I'm roughly in the same proportions as the image. I'm going to, that pier coming out of there, I'm going to make the main horizontal. That kind of helps me find where the rest of this goes. So I know the top of that building will come there, maybe there. Probably a little higher here maybe, right? Then I've got this lovely arc of California there. Got some more pitched roofs coming out of here. There is a bit of a diagonal there. This lovely shape of this palm here, it looks like a there's a series of poles and palm trees here. Gonna find them. I'm working on the, let's see, looks like a 140-pound cold press, and I'm on the back side of it. So this building back here is a bit of a focal point, maybe a secondary focal point. It's just a rectangle. Find where it is. It's a little to the left of center. But if you want to move it a little further to one side or the other, depending on what you think looks good, that's perfectly okay. It would just be a matter of you are stepping to one side or the other. Key diagonal there. Key one here. And now, we've got a whole lot of business in here, which is, it looks like a patio with chairs or like a restaurant or something like that. I am going to, because it is an area of shadow, I'm basically going to obscure everything in whatever those palms or foliage is that's going on in there, and just take advantage of that obscurity there. Now, I'm gonna work a figure in. Well, let's put our beach. That strip of beach, there's a very, very narrow wedge of water. And my buddy Ricky Sims in Washington used to live down here and surf here, he tells me. So let's see, pole, palm tree, another pole. For me, the easiest thing to do is just look for that little space in there. Draw that. Now I'm going to firm up where these little buildings are here. I like this. It looks like some sort of Victorian porch post facade here or something. I'm going to let that building, I'm going to pretend I'm a little shorter and let that building break up over the top of the ridge there. Secondary diagonal here, the base of that wall. Then I'm going to throw in my figure. I want his head to rectangle. Again, I just drew a little space in between there. And that's the Degas method for finding posture. See the space between the legs. A couple more figures back here. Now, figures. When you're drawing figures, Jan, how are you doing? Notice that the heads are almost all as though they were pieces of wash on a clothesline. It's because roughly, even though there's differences in our individual heights, heads will be at roughly eye level. So unless you're drawing an image where people are going downhill or uphill from you, you're going to want to make sure your heads are almost all on the same level. And let's put a guy, I like that runner. The bases, their feet, you'll see, will come in different places, and the physical size of the body will be larger. And another thing you can do to give the effect of people walking is make sure that shoulder lines or hip lines are a little bit on a diagonal and not straight, as if they were standing still. So I'm going to start erasing some things here. A lot of this is going to happen when the painting goes on, and I'm going to put in these little breaks on the wall where the light streams across. Now I did say, in this one here, I made a mistake of having that light skewer that guy and not come out the other side. So I think it's good to have a little bit of that come to, so we know he's in front of it and not impaled on it. There's a little bit of light creeping over this one here, but not coming out. I guess the light is coming from, yeah, upper right. So, yeah, here we go. I think we're... Begin taking out things that I don't want. Strengthen some lines that I do want. Oh, thank you, Jan. I'm glad you're enjoying them. I would love to see you do one. I think that would be... particularly those little gouaches you do. Oh my gosh. Okay. I think that's, remember, all this is, now I'm going to talk about how we should relate to this. Rather than seeing a junk drawer full of individual items, which, you know, I've been talking about here because I have to draw them and identify them as I draw. We want to see this in three big zones. You've got the sky, you've got the ground, and then you've got the stuff sticking up out of the ground. So we've got two horizontal planes and one set of vertical planes, buildings, people, trees, whatever. typically, one of those will be dark, one of those will be medium value, and one of them will be light value, although with the light coming in sideways like this, you will get situations where some things are illuminated in the vertical plane, but generally, our dark plane is this here, sides of the buildings that aren't catching the light. So notice I've labeled the sand on the beach and this building up here A. That's one value. Nearly identical. The sky and this thing here, I call them B and B plus because they're almost the same value. And then this area I call C and C plus because it's almost the same value, the plus being the slightly darker version. So to maybe make that a little clearer, this is what we want to see. Let me see if I can bring that up level. Oh, and we get the light from the ceiling. All of this is in shadow. Then there's these bits that are catching the light. And then we've got that medium value back there and then the sky. So if you see this, you'll find it's a lot easier to, I mean, there are people that paint and do things just like that. But if you can learn to see this way, it'll help you when you're trying to find the uniting values on a subject like this. So as I said, I'm going to go for a warmer later afternoon sky to not have so much blue everywhere, get a little more contrast there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a big old puddle of yellow ochre. Get a lot of water in there. That's kind of blue. I'll do it up here. I must have had a lot of blue in this brush last time I used it. And I'm going to modify it as I go down. I'm pretty much going to underpaint most of the whole thing and superimpose the blues and the other colors on top. Although I will be changing the color as I go. So here we go. Here's a very runny mix of that. So I'll be modifying this as I come down the page. I might skip that building or mop it out. Let's put a little bit of orange in it, just for starters. That looks very strong, but it's going to get paler. I'm going to add a little bit of maybe more yellow as I come down. Like I say, I'm going to make that keeping a bead. I'm going to make the maybe a little red in it. Get a little oranger as I come down here. Yeah, I'll skip this building, I think. And those houses down by the pier there. Now you notice there's a lot of white or light colored houses on that headland there. I'm going to go to a browner mix, burnt sienna, for the beach. When that dries, and we put the darker color over, those houses will look all right. I'm going to leave an open spot there for the blue. I'm going to come across, not across. Jeez. My mother's turning in her grave. And I'm going to get these little slivers of light here. not through the figure because he's going to be darker, or she. He's got a hoodie, so we don't know what's going on there. Maybe leave some little white skips here and there. In this area, I'm going to start getting into a green. I've got a bead there waiting for me. I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. And some Prussian blue because it's going to be dark, so. Soft edges because we're in the shadow. I'm going to make it very yellowish right about here where that light's cutting across that little bush there. Maybe I'll make it yellower still. Okay. Now I'll continue down with I'm going to start actually getting into blue here. I'm going to put some ultramarine because all of that's going to get darker. And I'm going to let it mingle with this a bit. Now by the time I get done with this, I might be able to sneak over here and bring this color right across. So I'm keeping a wet edge here. Don't want any white skips in this. That's all, this area is in shadow, so it's... Oh, you know what? I'm even going to... I'm going to go up here too. Now that has had a little bit of time to dry there. I'm going to bring there's like a bit of a cast shadow coming in there somehow. And I kind of like that. Now, alrighty, I think I can get away with it. I think this will be dry enough. I'm going to start coming across here, right through the figures. Let's get a more turquoise in the blue. Maybe even turquoise and a little bit of alizarin to get a bit of a join up with that, right through these figures, because they're going to be darker. Now as I get over to, I'm losing that was a little too wet. All right, well, there's ways to fix that. As I get over here, let's make it a little more lavenderish, purplish. I'm going to get redder, and as I go up the wall, I'm going to put some burnt sienna in it. Generally, if you paint something and it's a shadow or a light passage, well, I'm losing some of that, but we'll get it back. And you change the color as it moves, it will look more appealing. Okay, now here we are, we're at our holy mess stage. So it's, Now, let's tend to that cut through there. I'm rinsing the brush and squeezing the water out of it. And I'm going to just lift that out. There we go. And I really should tighten up that spot. Again, I don't want to leave any little white divots in the shade area. And these places, a little bit of darker colors are going to go in here, so we don't have to worry about that. So, like I say, this is our holy mess stage. Get all that little light bit out. Well, there'll be some darker colors. Now, I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush. And I'm going to get the Oriental. Well, it's about the same size, but that squirrel hair holds a lot more water than this thing. So I can paint the smaller areas with a little more control. Into that orangey color, I'm going to put a little bit of red to get a sort of a terracotta color similar to this. And just let that merge down into the greens there. And I am going to make this building that same. Well, let's make it a little more sienna-ish. Again, I'm going to let that merge a bit. This is going to come through there. Yeah, okay. Oh, let's get busy on our hillside. I'm going to come up with I'm going to put some turquoise into that mix that I was using for the wall. So it's a bit of turquoise, a bit of blue, ultramarine, and a bit of burnt sienna. I don't want this to be very assertive as a green. That's why I want to sort of dull it down. I just need to watch to leave the palm trunk light and leave I can paint over those because they're going to get darker. So I think I'll just start on this side of the building because quick brush strokes, because that's going to leave some little light spots behind. And those I will select. Hi, Ross.
How are you?
I'm going to selectively save or change the size of some of those things to make them look like buildings. And like I say, quick strokes. Closer to the building, I'm going to frame it. And again, like I said, I can hit those, but I do have to miss the palm tree over here. So when I leave those bits behind for the buildings, I am going to make sure that they're not equally sized, equally spaced. As we get down here to the pier, I want to keep this area a little bit damper. And I'm going to smuggle into that mix some ultramarine blue to make it a little bit darker and a little bit bluer. And Frida, how are you doing? Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so honored that you tuned in. So I'm touching in a bit of blue to the lower portions of the hillside where maybe there's some trees that we're seeing the shady side of. Maybe a few spots here and there up top to suggest we're seeing sides of trees on the hillside. Let's see. Now the underneath of the pier there, I'm going to put some burnt sienna into that mix that I just had. There appears to be some condos here or something. Quick stroke again.
I see what you can't.
So we're starting to get a little, this is like basically very abstract shapes. Rectangles, triangles, dots, that sort of thing. Still a little wet there. I think what I'll do while that's wet and I'm waiting for it, this is damp. I'm going to take some of that and right at where the, well, it's not that damp, is it? So I'll bring a little water near it to get that weathered look. So up there where it's a little drier, I'm going to try to indicate that slight ledge. I'm going to do more of that close to us and a little less farther away. Very mindful of the, well, let's get some more blue, that mix we were using in here. Something blue. I'm going to do some separations of those, but not even separations. There's some kind of buildings up there that are all kind of a type and evenly spaced. So some sort of developer's dream or something. I'm going to break that up and make it a little more unequal. Now, yep, blue, pale, any kind of pale blue that's about that value or a little lighter, I'm going to bring out some cast shadows onto the beach. It's okay, yeah, we can frame, and I'll notice I'll make them a little bit higher chroma closer to us. They are going to be the continuation of these shadows that are happening in here. Although this one would not correspond to that, it would probably correspond to something further up the line. Rinsing. Maybe we can get away with this. It might be the right dampness. I'm bringing a wet brush into this, trying to create a light blossom. Too late. We'll do it dark. I should have done that earlier. Yeah, we'll do that with a dark. Things like that. Unless there's something that you know are very specific things, you can make a light thing dark because it's performing a function defining the plane there, telling us where we're at. Right now I want to play with the palm tree. So I'm going to get some of that reddish stuff, maybe put a little yellow in it, maybe just a little bit of blue to get it greener. I want a dull, dull green. Greener. Okay. Not too green though. Oh, yeah, there we go. So I'm going to hit the shape of that, whatever those palm trees are. I love that hangy down bit. That's an official artistic term, hangy down bit. So, now coming out of that, I'm going to get a dark ultramarine. So this is slower moving paint. You notice as I'm going along, the paint is getting slower moving. Hi, Carol. How are you? I'm going to touch the left side here where the shadows are and let it make an organic bleeding shape. Pull down for these, I think one of them is another palm and another one is a light pole. And then I'm going to get the shaded side of the palm tree and I'm going to stop it right down there. That's darken that a bit, maybe more. Going to evacuate that. And I'll get into some darker marks on that later when I want a crisper mark. Now, let's start down through this shadow. Yeah. I'm going to just get some plain old red, and I'm going to hit this fella's jacket, or her jacket, we don't know. I'm going to give the runner back here a turquoise jacket. Red and turquoise are always a nice combo. Cobalt or some bright blue like cerulean, again slow moving. For this figure here, pretty much want that person to stay in the shadows. And then I'm going to take a very dark blue, burnt sienna and ultramarine, mostly blue, and then I'm going to hit the pants. And I want a little bit of the red to run, or the blue to run up into the red, or the red to run into the blue. Pull a I rinsed the brush, damped it out. Hi, Jackie. Tom Dooley, yeah. So folk music buffs will recognize that reference. Let's put some very pale blue items back here. Again, we're creating busyness, I guess you'd say. To suggest those out of focus things that when the eye is looking at the figure, those things in the background will be well out of focus. So I'm going to pull some slightly darker bits. I think I want to go darker with this. Whatever that is. The palms come up and obscure that junction point. I'm just going to put some lines in here because when we're looking here, all of that will be out of focus. That's how the eye sees. However, the minute the eye looks over to that area, we see all the detail in it. So, now I'm going to do a slightly, what shall I make it? Let's just have burnt sienna, very pale burnt sienna and a lot of water. For that side of the palm tree. Again, we'll be going back into that later. Now, maybe some of that same stuff in a bit more water to make some variation in the beach. Sandy area. I want it to be a little darker than the light cutting across the sidewalk there. Then I'm going to get a little bit of that blue again, the bright blue. Very pale. And I'm going to tint the water and leave some white, hopefully to suggest some breakers there.
What kind of blue is that?
Oh, it's mostly cerulean and a little bit of what was on the palette.
Okay.
So at this point, I want to get into this big, strong dark. So let's see. Prussian blue, because it's dark to start with. And a little bit of burnt sienna, which surprisingly, this is very slow moving, not moving paint. When burnt sienna goes into Prussian, it goes into a kind of a deep green, oddly enough. This is like a banana palm of some sort. I'm no horticultural expert, that's for sure. It's some kind of big flat leaves. Let's put a little more yellow in that. I'm sticking right into my yellow. And if you remember, I'm going to bring that out a little further than it actually does come. I'm going to throw a bit of ultramarine into it. I'm going to get blue. Well, let's get some alizarin in there to get a deep, rich aubergine kind of color. And that's going to be for the very darkest spots.
Aubergine? What's that?
A purple, like eggplant.
Oh.
Eggplant purple. And I'm going to use that to sort of frame. Maybe I'll leave some of those, well, we'll see. I'll leave my continuum later. I want to frame this lighter part where the light is breaking across the arborvitae or whatever. Again, I'm not a... We'll call it stinkobunchia. How about that? Okay, now a little bit more yellow to go greener again, or maybe some turquoise. And rinse that in just a bit more water. What do we got? Business in here too. Put some horizontal shapes in there. Yeah, I'm looking at these now, and like I said, they're going to be a little too light, so they'll get tinted later. Okay, a little bit more yellow and turquoise to get just a bit more green. No, not that green. Put some Prussian in it. And here's our foreground bush. Get out on the end of the brush and get some irregular broken strokes, especially up there where the small leaves are. Okay, now all of that, a bit of red and some water. So I'm going to lead out of that. Make this person's pants a little darker. Obscurification. Some of these bits like that. There's like some rectangular indentations in the wall there. And you notice what I'm doing is I'm painting two sides, one vertical and one horizontal side. I'm not painting the whole rectangle. That's how the eye sees. Put a little more hillside there. Let's get some.
How does the eye see?
The eye sees, it picks a place to focus. That comes into complete focus, and then around it is peripheral.
Right.
The minute the eye darts over to the next place, we see focus there, and then what we previously looked like goes out of focus.
Right.
Then, back behind the eyeball, all of that gets stitched together
Right.
for a complete idea. And that's how we've developed cameras over time to represent this is in focus, this is in focus, this is in focus, this is in focus, but you don't see that way.
Right.
We're forgetting that. I mean, as we're, the more and more we're
So in other words, we should leave some things in the background out of focus.
right. If you want to get, it depends on what you're out to do artistically.
Right.
I think we have our feeling or our mood for something that we look at with the initial glance.
Right.
When we begin stitching together all that information, that becomes not something we feel, but something we know. That's our knowledge of the subject.
Well, the colors sort of dull out, don't they? as
Well,
you keep
yeah.
looking at it, right?
If you're focused here, all of that goes very gray.
But I mean, even as you keep looking at it too, I mean, like Big Monet or Henry Henchy or somebody said that you keep looking at something and the colors change. They're not as bright maybe as the initial glance, you know what I mean?
That's probably true. I think a lot of things change. I think I know exactly what he's talking about because several times, like I'll be out, mowing the lawn or something, and I'll catch something out of the corner of my eye, and then I'll turn around to look at it,
Right.
and it doesn't look the same.
Right.
So something goes on there. So what I'm doing right now is I just took a very pale mix of the blues, and I'm wasn't able to lift a light line out. I'm painting a darker area over so that I can leave a lighter spot behind. And this will, also let me create some into the subject type. Well, what's the right term we want here? Some lines that create horizontality or remind us what's going on there. I'm going to start throwing in some, I guess they're like lifeguard poles, or maybe they tell you what part of the beach you're at or something. There's some light lines in here. Maybe a bit of... So you can see I'm down to some very, very small stuff. And after this, what I'm going to do... I'm going to put a window in there. What the heck? Only the person that owns the building knows that's not true. So I'm going to put suggest something like that over here. Just some out of focus sort of detail. I believe I need to get this dry before I can do anything else. So, Carol, it's not detailed. Let's see if I can bring it up here so you can just see how unfocused it is. That's just splatches and splotches, and anybody can do that. But we're trying to do, I'll put it back on the easel. I'm trying to get us to looking at how we see versus what we know, because the classic newbie thing to do is to get a photo reference, and whenever they see something, they put it in. And it's like a thing you kind of have to get, you either have to work it out of your system or just make the mental transformation, because it's kind of like, to me, creating like a junk drawer where do I focus? It's the crowd. It's not Gladys and the Pips. So I'm going to, as soon as I do these last few marks when I dry it, then I'm going to Gladys in the red coat here. So. I'm on this Waterford 140 cold press, and I'm on the back side of it, so it's a slightly different, actually almost a hot press texture. So I'm erasing any pencil work out of the light areas so that I don't lock it in. Now that looks like there's a break between the two buildings. So I think that needs to become a little bit more of that orangey sienna color too. And let's make this building a little more orangey or reddish, just to differentiate them. So they don't appear to sit in the same space, because they don't. Now, jacket a little redder, leave some of the other stuff behind. A stiff mix of basically alizarin and some blue and some red, and I'm going to tuck in here where the elbows go. And then right under here, where the jacket's bottom is. And then this leg, the right leg, which is bent. Again, this is very slow, not moving, stiff paint. From the knee down, I'm going to make a little darker. And maybe under his buttocks there too. Some water with that to make it not as dark. And maybe closer figure, well, that figure. And now I'm going to do this for the pants on the jogger. Suggest some other figures back here. Now, let's take that purplish mix and get up here and get some crisp marks. In that palm. And mainly these are going to be on the left side of the object. Yeah, let's have one. Some strong darks here to frame our figures. Maybe we could use, I'm gonna, underneath this roof eave, I'm gonna bring the front of that building down. Now the head, I'm gonna get just maybe some burnt sienna and some ultramarine blue, make a umberish color for the hair. I think I'll take maybe a little bit of orangey red color. Face. What else can we do here? I think my turquoise needs to come a little further down on my jogger's jacket.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Do you ever feel tempted to put in more red on that figure in the foreground?
When I get everything else, what I'm doing now is I'm tinting some of these leaves with turquoise.
So you're leaving that red for last?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to make my final decisions about the figure, or Gladys. It's tough. Everybody, you should go back to the original here. Virtually everybody's in black. People wear black nowadays. It's you don't get these amazing dresses, or you don't get these colors or anything like we used to have. Put a little bit of tint in that. I'm going to use that turquoise tint too, further back here. And a little bit under here. Send that back. Some of this too. Because I feel like some of this is jumping out a bit. And maybe just a bit more of the blue in the breakers, or the water there. Some suggestion of some architectural detail. And that's that for that. Now, the red. Well, first I want to make that little halo above the head and the shoulders there a little more apparent. Let's make this figure a little darker. I'll make it 2 figures. Somebody and their kid. Pants a little darker on that guy. By doing that, I'm trying ways to make the red look a little redder on its own. And if that doesn't work, then I might throw a little extra red in. But I'm going to throw it in with some orange to make it brighter. And soften it. There we go. Now, let's see. That building is starting to jump out a lot. So a lot of water and some turquoise. I'm going to take it down a bit. And now I think, well, let's see. Maybe just a bit more there. Again, any kind of detail I want to load up the front end first. I'm not doing these little puddles, but if we did, well, okay, I'm not doing them. So, but if we did, I'll get a blue, sort of a dullish blue, and working out of I guess it had just rained or something. I don't know. And then with a paler blue, like a turquoise maybe. Then we're going to get the white put a drop of that on the palette here. Mix a little of the turquoise with it. And put some rim reflection on that.
Wow.
Could also use that to suggest some other buildings back here, but again, I don't want to get too crazy. I think I would be better off suggesting figures which are closer to us. Let's see. The more I look at this secondary figure, the one behind Gladys, this pip needs to be a darker, stronger blue, which I hope makes the red
It does.
look redder. There we go. Okay. I think I need to go a little darker on the lower portions of these palms. And this area looks a little busy.
So that blue is what is that blue you're using?
Cobalt.
Cobalt.
Well, it might have been ultramarine.
So it looks like cobalt and a little ultramarine.
Yeah, probably a little bit of, at this point, something has gotten into everything.
It's really working well.
So, yeah, this is where you think, well, you better quit while you're ahead.
Yep.
If I get too busy back there, then I'm going to have to like paint the Levi stitching on the back of that thing there. I think I could probably warm that up a bit. I warm it and darken it, which means like a purple glaze. Yeah, just a bit. And we'll peel it and see what we get. So, again, the big point I wanted to get across today was seeing that big pattern of light and shade. Where light is getting, where light is not getting. And just be aware of how you see when you glance. Because you glance here, you glance there, you glance there, and then you see more and more and more information. And eventually stitch it all together into this catalog in your mind. And that's not kind of how you see when you're looking. That's how you know. Or there's probably some kind of official word for what I'm trying to say. How you stitch your experiences together.
I think in the academy they'd say squint.
Well, yeah, squinting. I'll tell you, two things you can do. Oh, thanks, Linda. Two things you can do, and with no other instruction, if you just keep painting, you will get good. One is to squint at what you're looking at and try to paint that. And the other thing is never look at one thing. Well, okay, now I'm going to need to explain this because this relates to what I've been trying to say here. If you look at the figure, you're going to see changes of value, color. When you look back here at the building, your eye is going to adjust for the distance and the illumination, and you're going to see an equal amount of focus and an equal amount of detail until something gets really, really far away. So then if you go and try and paint that, you're going to get the junk drawer thing where everything is equally rendered and we don't know where to look, or there's not a primary focus anywhere. So when you look at whatever you decided is going to be your focal point, be aware of the color in your peripheral vision when you're looking at that, rather than looking out here. Because then all of that green, and you'll see leaves and individual trees. When you're looking at this, you're just going to see this big wedge of gray-green. So I'm just adding a couple of stronger dark shapes in here and losing some of the ones that I have. It's a little too busy right there, close to the edge of the painting. So that's that. The other big change I made, other than, well, let's put that, I like that light. Street lamp. And then next to it, dumb thing, but I liked it. I'm going to put a big vertical in here. I just went, whoa, maybe that's too much, John. Let's take it out. Make it lighter. So I rinsed the brush, squeezed it. I'm going to lighten it. Probably shouldn't have done that. Live and learn.
I have a Kleenex if you want to.
Let's see. Let me look at that.
What?
Yeah, let's just dampen it up. Take it out. Really lighten it up. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Sometimes I get a wild hair and do things like that. Thanks, Ross. Yeah. We'll just obscurify it. But that's how that's how you wreck stuff. Okay, he says as he starts fooling around more. Just gonna throw a little bit more green into portions of the palm up there to, you know, somewhat relate it to what's going on down here. And that's that. Okay, so the method we used, painted the light areas all through because all this silhouette is darker.
Did you come to the bottom with those? That
Brought the ochre all the way down through here, skipped the area of the building and the water.
Did you come into the foreground?
Came into the foreground here with the yellow. Just
ochre.
it was yellow ochre with a little bit of cat orange in it. Did these slivers of light and that, left that white paper. Came down here with a blue, came across, hit the figure. Maybe should have waited a little longer so it didn't go into that, and I lifted that out damp. Back to that. Came across, and as I was coming this way, I mixed a little more burnt sienna in it. So I went from a blue to a green, threw some yellow in down there for that. Came across with the blue and then the burnt sienna.
So that was ultra with what else to get that beautiful blue-gray you have down here, like around?
That, yeah, there was a little
Very
bit of
nice.
burnt sienna.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what about right in here?
And yeah, that was basically, it's kind of blue to green to blue to a little bit of sienna.
Just a little sienna.
To more sienna.
To more sienna at the bottom.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it looks like I've lost some of my stuff like that will tend to dry lighter. Okay, so hopefully you guys got the gist of what I'm saying. But anyway, what I was saying was that if you just squint when you look and try to paint what you're squinting, see when you squint, boy, I mean, you'll get miles just on that. Oh, I'm glad you enjoy that part. Okay, so I'm going to tune out with you guys and then jump in with the group here. And next week, I'm considering doing, we haven't really done this before, but using watercolor, but mixing a little bit of white into it and using a toned piece of paper, more like gouache, almost more like oil painting. And I think it's a good way to address subjects which you can't normally do easily in watercolor. And I think I'll have a kind of fun subject that way. So thanks again, you guys, for tuning in, and see you next week.